We have some very good-looking and very brave people up here who I know very well. So at the far end of the table is Yesenia Torres, Namel Norris, Dan Tratt, Mike Walker, and we've already met, sort of, Matt and Elaine Castelluccio. And one of the reasons I think a panel is always powerful is that you could hear things from us as professionals, but when it comes from people themselves, it always touches me much more, and it's those stories that really stay with me. So one of the things we learned from the previous conference we did, I think it was Mitch Tepper asked a question to the audience, which were all people in wheelchairs, what did you first learn when you were first injured, when you were on rehab? What did you first learn about sex? What did they tell you about it? Who talked to you about it? Anybody, raise your hand. And the whole entire place, not one hand went up. And that really hit me. When I was sitting there that day, I went, okay, well, maybe that's not totally true. Maybe they forgot. But still, like the majority of the audience, no hands went up. So what I thought today is we'd ask a few questions to our panel about what that experience was like for them when they were first injured, and what we can do as professionals, right? Because that's why we're here today. We want to know how we can better help people with this injury to understand that sexuality, sensuality, intimacy, and love are all possible. And I think that conversation starts with us. So the way the panel's organized is we're going to start with Matt and Elaine, who, as you already heard, are married 6 years and have twins who actually their doctor was the fertility doctor, Dr. Klein, who was speaking earlier. So it all comes kind of full circle. First I'm going to ask Matt a couple of questions, and then we'll move on to both of you. So Matt, when you were in rehab, maybe you could tell us a little bit about, you got hurt and you were in rehab. What was your experience like there in terms of who came to you to talk about sex? Was anything brought up at all?
Okay. So when I was in rehab, I came into rehab I kind of accepted early on, like in ICU actually, conceded the fact that I had just gotten out of a relationship right before my motorcycle accident, and that, okay, considering my situation now, I probably will never be in a relationship. Who's going to want to deal with this? And I accepted it in ICU and came into rehab with that acceptance. I was in a 4-bedded room. Most of my roommates were paras. I was the only quad. And I was there for about 5.5 months. And over the course of 5.5 months, I watched the doctors come in and take my other 3 roommates out for the sexuality talk. And it was never addressed to me. So it just confirmed my thoughts that, well, I guess because of my level of injury, it's just not in the cards for me to be in a relationship or to have sex again. And I just kind of accepted that and went on and left rehab with that kind of thought in my head that this is just not part of my life going forward, and I need to focus on myself and get myself to a good place. And it wasn't until 2.5 years later that the whole sexuality talk came up, and it was driven by actually an outsider, a woman I met who said, I was friendly with her, and she said, you might want to inquire yourself about what is possible. And that was the first time when I went into my outpatient clinic and started the conversation. It was the first time in 2.5 years that I even had a possibility of having sex again or being in a relationship or being intimate again.
Wow. So if I was going to ask you, what was the biggest factor that helped you in reinventing your sexuality, what would you say?
Exploration. I had, at the time, my first relationship, individual kind of instilled in me confidence to explore and see what's possible. And over the course of 14 years, it's just been an exploration into reinventing what sex is to me. We have I feel like a misconception in society these days that sexuality is solely penetration and all that. And I had to realize there's far more to sexual encounter than just a penetration. That's only a small part of the entire experience. Once I kind of wrapped my head around that idea, then everything started to fall into place.
How long did it take you to date after your injury?
2.5 years I started hanging out with someone that was interested in me, but I didn't commit to that relationship right away because I mentally wasn't ready. I couldn't accept that this individual was willing to deal with that. I didn't want to get my heart broken. I was scared. I was just starting to get comfortable with being in the wheelchair, and I didn't want anyone to disrupt that. And I knew how you had to be somewhat vulnerable in a relationship. And I remember she used to say, I don't even see the chair. And that used to anger me. Because I'm like, every morning when I get up, I see the chair. Every time I look in the mirror. For 2 years, I didn't look at myself in a full-length mirror because I didn't want to see visually what had happened and what I was. And it got me angry that she was saying it. And then after a while, she explained herself a little more thoroughly. And, she said, no, of course I see the chair, but I'm dating you, not the chair. And that was kind of the first step in getting into relationships and exploring and becoming comfortable and pretty much valuing myself as a man again, and realizing I had brought some value to the table in a relationship.
Now, this question is sort of for both of you, because we don't often hear from the partner. So I just want to say that I'm really happy that Elaine came today. We hear often from the person with the injury, but I think the other half is the partner. So thank you, Elaine. When you got together and you were dating, and this I want to hear what each of your responses. What was your main sexual concern? You can choose who goes first. You go first.
I don't care how much education you have. Obviously Elaine is a PT, so she had schooling and had experience because she specialized in spinal cord. But there's still that, exploration needs to take place, any relationship. I don't care if someone's in a wheelchair or someone's not in a wheelchair. When you get together with someone, it's learning your partner and learning that. Well, we have a couple other factors that came into play there. So I think with me, it was, okay, there are things, even though she knows it, when you're in a relationship, there are things that might come about, as Damon had touched on. Is she going to be okay dealing with this? Is she going to be, it's one thing when you're dealing with a patient. It's another thing when you're dealing with your partner and dealing with some of this. And for me, she I remember my first experience where it wasn't even sexual. We were out to dinner, and my friend's kid was bouncing on my lap and pressed on my bladder, and I leaked. And I looked, and I was like, oh, God. Now the kid's pants are wet. I'm like, this is embarrassing. And Elaine spilled water on my lap. And said, oh, man. So I was like, all right, she's okay with it. And she was like, let's wrap this up and go home. So that was kind of one of my concerns going into it was, all right, is she going to be all right dealing with the reality of it? It's one thing when you have a patient. It's another thing when it's your partner. And all the challenges, I can't get into every place easily, but I got to give it to her. And right away, she was like, all right, let's hoist you up and get you up, And in bed, it's a whole other aspect, all right. I was still learning. And it's always a constant educational process for me of what I can do, what I can't do, what will work, what won't work, and is she willing to take that road with me? But I don't think that's very much different than any relationship, right? So it's just a few other factors that many other relationships don't have to deal with. But
So being a physical therapist who works on a spinal cord unit, you would think that would put me in a much more advantageous spot than the average person who is entering into a relationship with somebody in a wheelchair. But in reality, I was so glad to hear earlier lectures this morning saying it's really no different than any other relationship. So I was still nervous and found myself being overly concerned that I wouldn't hurt Matt's feelings in any way or do something that was insensitive, or even worse than that, become his physical therapist and not his girlfriend and not his partner. So I gave myself I think initially, a lot of undue stress. And on top of that, which is normal for every one of us in a relationship, I'm an Irish Italian Catholic who was brought up, you never talk about sex, ever talk about sex. And so that's not a comfort zone for me, irregardless of whether he was in a wheelchair or not. But Matt, by that point, had been injured for a while and was way more comfortable, I guess because he had been in other relationships before him and I met. So he was very open with me and honest with me, and for the first time, I think because it meant something, I was willing to let down my barriers and talk for the first time about what it is that is different for him, and things that can happen. And I just listened and took it all in, and also shared with him my anxieties and my fears. But so I think because of that, our relationship has always been more successful than any relationship I've had. And maybe part of that is because he is in a wheelchair, because I don't think I would have been as open to communication. In all my prior relationships, it didn't force me to go beyond my comfort zone. But Matt did, and I think that only helped us, irregardless of chair or no chair, is all through the morning it's been communication. And it really does have to be communication. Even when you know it, as a PT or an OT or a nurse, it's not the same thing as when you're about to live it and breathe it. So I think that was one of the biggest areas that was stress-provoking and anxiety-provoking.
You know, I was fortunate. I mean, as many times as I had questions, I was nervous to ask a doctor and stuff, but I had teammates like Damon. When I started playing rugby with Damon and the guys, that's kind of where I became a little more comfortable with the understanding of my sexuality and what is possible, and a lot of it is attitude. So then when I got into relationships, I kind of carried that over as best as I could and used humor a lot of times to offset some of those awkward moments. But
I think humor is a big part of both who Matt and I are in our personalities, and it had to carry over into the bedroom, irregardless, because that's just who we are. So if an accident happens, you have to laugh about it. You can't make it becomes as big a thing as you make it. So if Matt would have reacted in this big emotional way, it would have been a bigger thing. But the fact that he could laugh at it, and he knew I was going to laugh right back at him. And when things didn't work out, we also laughed rather than made it a thing. So I think humor and taking things lightly and not making things so serious has helped us.
One other question. Your parents, right? And one of the things I hear a lot as a psychologist after people first get hurt is, I could never really, not only can I not physically have kids, but how am I going to parent a kid in a wheelchair? How's that going to work? What would you say the challenges are for each of you, which may be different, because I've also heard from the able-bodied spouse there's more physical stuff that maybe they need to do. How would you describe for each of you the challenges of parenting?
Be kind.
Yeah. I mean, when we became parents, when I became a parent, I was 10 years post-injury. I was independent in all aspects of my life. Suddenly, these little things come into the world. And, oh my, I had to relearn everything all over again, And as comfortable as Elaine and I were together, I mean, what can I do? What can I do? So it came back down to communication. through the whole getting pregnant part, that was a whole series. I mean, she, bless her, I mean, she did all the work and contacted the client's office and, set it up. And unfortunately for the woman, a lot more falls on her. So trying to be supportive of her during that time. We had a couple of incidences of
Matt,
injecting.
with this hand, used to inject my rear end every night.
One
How
night,
trusting am I? Seriously.
a slightly funny story, but at the time was not. During that in vitro, there's a timed shot that needs to be administered at a very specific time when you hit a certain stage.
When they're going to harvest your eggs.
So I needed to inject this in her. So she goes, you got it? I got it. I stuck the needle in and followed the instructions and pushed the plunger down, and all of a sudden the needle part came off, and I was holding the syringe in my hand. And what? I said,
No, all I heard was, uh-oh.
What? I'm like, the needle's still inside you. So there were challenges along the way, is what I'm trying to get. But, even once the kids came, it was just an education on both our parts, what I can do, how I have to do it. She was good at trying to find equipment out there to do it. But it's a whole learning process. And there's been challenges. For me, as a father in a wheelchair, there's been moments of, I don't know how to say, I get emotional. There's, you have visions of parenthood. And I was always very active with my dad and my uncles, and I wanted to be that way. I wanted to climb trees and do all that. And
Got you back.
no, I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. So, that was a big adjustment for me, because there are certain things, I had to reinvent my visions of what parenthood would be for me. I remember the first time we took our kids swimming, and I sat on the side of the pool and watched others swimming with my kids. I had to step away for a moment and calm down and reassess and come back. And instead of, in my mind, at that moment, I kind of reevaluated, and she could see it, and she offered to help me in the pool and do this and do that. And she did help me in the pool, and I swam alongside it. But instead of letting it break me down at that point, I said, all right, what do I have to do what I want with my kids? So we tried different life jackets and stuff like that. And finally, I was able to swim and actually hold my kid on my chest while I swam. And those kind of things, those moments, when they were little, I couldn't lift them out of the crib. Now I had to have someone help me. How do I get the kid out of the crib? How do we look at this? It was a whole learning process all over again. That was at times hard. And at times it was probably hard for her because she couldn't understand what was going on in my head, because my emotions got the better of me in the moment. But it was a re-education. Now at this point, I realize, sometimes I was overthinking things.
Thank you. Elaine, how about from your side?
Matt was being extra kind towards me in things that may have bothered him initially. I think also the first year was definitely the toughest for the two of us. We were part of IVF before they did just the one embryo at the same time. So we have two lovely twins that are awesome. But that first year is a tough year, able-bodied or not. And one of the things that's another great blessing of IVF is those hormones stay in your body for like a good 18 months. So I was a bear to live with during the pregnancy, and certainly for about 2 years after the pregnancy. Whether it was the hormones, sleep deprivation, or just a little bit of everything, Matt dealt with the brunt of my emotions. So I'm a PT, and Matt and I do sports, and we've done all sorts of crazy, wild, kayak-like stories like you shared earlier That is Matt and I's life up until we had children. So when Matt wanted to try crazy things, I was right there with him, applauding him and helping problem solve how he could do that. Something happens. They don't tell you this when you get pregnant, right? Something happens when you are mom, and you're insane because you just want to protect these two things that you've known for a minute, but you love them more than anything else in the world. And suddenly, the person Matt used to know, who was really adventurous and was pushing Matt to do, was scared when Matt wanted to try and get them out of the crib, or was scared when Matt wanted to hold both of them at the same time for the first time. And Matt didn't recognize that in me, so it was really frustrating to him, like, who have you become? And I was mad at myself because I knew every time I jumped in, it hurt his feelings. I saw it in his eyes. But the bigger part of me, I couldn't stop myself. I still have those moments of weakness where I jump in. I hope Matt would agree, I'm much better than what I was the first year. But it's a whole different world. And I always was proud of us and how I never tried to feel limitations with us until I was a mom. And then I was scared that accidents could happen and they were gonna hit their heads. And I would just envision all these terrible things. And it took me a really long time to see that Matt would not do anything that was out of his comfort zone, and I just needed to probably just walk away and go outside and not look at the method in which he was going to try and lift them for the first time. And once we found a balance, things got a lot better.
So one last question, which I think is important for all of us. If you had to name one thing that would be helpful for healthcare providers to address regarding sexuality and spinal cord injury, what would it be?
As a healthcare professional, I could say I wish, going back all this time, that it was a bigger part of what you all have today, because I think from the get-go, you just have to have these conversations. However you could throw it in there, whether it's were you in a relationship before, or if they start to ask questions, rather than my go-to answer was always like, I don't know, but I know there's these pamphlets, so now there's so much more that you all can walk away with this from, and perhaps as the PT or the OT, maybe you're not the first go-to, but at least I just think the more you talk, equate it to the more you don't talk about something, then it seems like it's abnormal. And it makes it stereotypes it more. Right. So the more we're just open about, just like we're talking about, I'm your OT and I'm gonna help you learn a way to catheterize. I'm your OT and there's some tools I can introduce to you when you're ready to talk about sex. Right. And leave it at that. We just don't do it enough.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the more you talk about, the more normal it seems, the more it'll feel open to ask questions. You're gonna have patients that are not ready in that moment to talk about it, but at least if you discuss it, they know it exists and there's a possibility, so when they are ready, they will approach. The worst thing could be someone like me who left rehab thinking it's not possible, and for 2 years of my life had, put that on a shelf as never coming back out. I didn't know who to ask when I wanted to ask those questions. I was blessed with a team full of guys that were open and honest with me, but if I didn't have my rugby players, I don't know at what point it would have come up. I thought it was taboo, and I thought it was not to be spoken about because I couldn't do it. So just talk, communicate, share.
And don't ignore and include the partners in that.
Yeah.
Maybe separately, too. I mean, I think that's also, I don't think initially I would have been as forthright with my feelings if Matt was right there in front of me. Okay. So I think it's important, it's not just the person in the wheelchair who's going to have all these questions, it's the partner, too.
Yeah.
Very good point. Okay, so just in case you need to go early, that's fine.
Yeah.
The kids are waiting. The twins are waiting.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what I'd like to do is move on to the rest of the panel, and those are the couples questions. I figure maybe we could start with Mike Walker. He's also, we also call him Denzel. I can see why, right?
Hello, everybody. Pleasure to meet you. Nice
Okay.
faces out there.
So I think one of the things, and Dr. Sipsky referred to this when she was talking, is that people have a sexuality and a sexual history before this happens, typically. So I thought maybe we could spend like a moment, if you could just describe what your sexuality was like prior to your injury.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I was about 21 when I had the accident. I've been in the wheelchair now for 17 years, and I'm a thoracic 11 and 12, incomplete. And sexuality for me was very vivid before the accident, and even more so now. I've had some very, very interesting experiences, but before, I could remember thinking differently. And I think now I've become a lot more creative. With the accident, it caused me to look further into what I can do versus what I can't do. I think if you place focus on what you can't do, then you get more of the same. So it's kind of laws of attraction in a way. Focusing on what I could do allowed me to see a whole new world. And I was already studying things like Taoism and Kama Sutra and things of that nature. It was somewhere around 1999 and 2000. It was, we were hearing more and more about Kama Sutra books and stuff like that. So I was interested in it. I became more interested in it after the accident. So needless to say, there was a lot of things that took place here in Mount Sinai. There was on a third floor, I think there was a little room. I don't know if you guys know about that room. It's still there? Oh my God. Yeah.
We don't use it as much now.
Okay. So I think you guys should. I think it would be real beneficial for people in my position to have experiences like that, because I was thrown in that room and left to my own devices. They were like, hey, we're going to stick you in this room for about 2 days, and whatever happens in there happens. Just keep it down. And I was like, whoa, really? Here in Mount Sinai? And so I had to get up. I had to learn how to do everything all over again. It was a great experience because at the time I had a girlfriend, but I couldn't do too much because she was pregnant, and my daughter is now 17, so she's the age of the accident, actually. She was on the way, and we had some experiences in that room, and I think they slowed the program down a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, we don't have that sexual piece anymore, but they use it for spending the night, seeing if you
Yes.
could manage.
It was very important to me because it gave me the first experience of, wow, what is it going to be like when I leave here?
Yeah.
What is the experience? Can I perform? So a lot of days on the internet, right in the room on KCC2, I was surfing sex toys and stores, and I was trying to figure out, like, when I get out of here, I know exactly where I'm going. And we had a house on 233rd and Dyer, and literally right around the corner from 233rd and Dyer in the Bronx, there's a sex shop. So I went there. I tried to buy everything in there that I could buy. I took my whole SSI check at the time. Yeah. And what happened next was amazing because I just so happened to have found someone that was interested in me. And none of the toys mattered. But I didn't know that. Ahead of time, there was no way of knowing that. I was prepared. I had this toy in one hand, this toy around my neck. I had something on my lap. I was like, yeah, I'm going into this. You ready? Because I'm ready. So, needless to say, the person I was with, I was fortunate to find someone that was open-minded. And again, creative. I've always been creative myself, doing art and martial arts and stuff like that. And it gave me an edge. So when I started to focus more on what I could do, it kind of opened up her mind. But I noticed the more confident I was in it, she was equally confident. And I think with women, I think, with you guys, I mean, you can confirm it for me, but when you're given the opportunity and you have real good conversation and communication, you respond better if you know the truth. So I had a lot of different experiences, sort of like what he was explaining. I mean, I can remember, getting down and dirty one time, and things got a little wet from my bladder. And she was like, babe, is that me? No, that's all you, babe. Keep going. Keep going. But I say that to say, we had to figure it out. And I had to just, be funny about it and straightforward, And I don't know. I've had a lot of good experiences being in the wheelchair. And I was also married for 6 years in that particular situation, right after the accident. She left me for somebody else, but it's okay. I went on, I moved on, and now I'm in another kind of relationship that's kind of different. You guys might want to hear about it or maybe not. But I've been fortunate to be in a relationship with 2 individuals at the same time. Ooh. And they know about each other. It's a good thing. And communication is everything. And some of my confidence came from individuals like, you guys call him Jim, I call him Superman. Jim Cesario back there. I don't know if you guys know him, but yeah, that's Superman. I've gone skydiving with him. I've done a little bit of everything. And I can honestly say, like, even the skydiving situation, when I came back down from there, I felt like I could do anything. And that's one of the reasons why it made me focus on creativity in the bedroom rather than, oh my God, I can't do this and I can't do that. So it's honestly been a good experience.
That's
different.
Different. But it sounds like creativity, exploration, and
Yes.
communication and humor. Those things
Absolutely.
are all super important. Now, what struck me about your KCC2 experience was that it sounded like you were sort of left on your own to figure it out.
Yes.
And you didn't quite get much information while you were there from the healthcare people.
So I was given a book, and in the book, it was extremely thin, the sex part of it, and anything having to do with sexual contact or what happens next, it was really thin. There wasn't much of anything in it, and
so if you were going to speak to these people here, what would have made it easier for you from the get-go when you were on inpatient rehab, rather than kind of put you up in that room without much information?
Mm-hmm.
Is there something you could think back and say, wow, this would have really been helpful if? What would it be?
I think if there was a program that could address the sexual needs of the male and the female, and maybe the therapist or
Positioning.
yes, absolutely. And I was also thrown a tape too. So there was a VHS tape. Maybe some of you know about that tape. I haven't seen it in years, but yeah, I watched it. It was interesting. It was interesting. But I'll say this much. I think if there had been someone to talk about the types of devices that exist, the types of vibrators or prosthetics, it would have been a better experience. And I had to find all of that out myself, which was a great thing. But I mean, I know that if I was less confident,
Correct.
it wouldn't have happened that way.
And I think
It was
for
just
many...
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
It was just the fact that I was explorative that I was able to obtain that information. But if there was a program here, and this is the perfect place for it, I think it would do a very great thing for other people.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, now we have Dan Tratt, recently married Dan Tratt, right?
Yes.
Welcome, Dan.
Hi. Hi. Welcome. Oh, thank you.
So Dan, if you were going to tell us a little bit about your sexuality prior to and then how that was kind of changed by your injury?
Sure. I think Mike and I were injured the same year in '99. I was 20 years old at the time, and I was a student at SUNY Binghamton, and I was at the time single. I was dating somebody, but not very seriously. And so when I had an accident, I ended up, in Mount Sinai, and my family was with me. But I think looking back on it, it was probably for my best interest that I didn't have a significant relationship at the time, because I don't see how it would have been able to last. Because if you remember, I wasn't the greatest patient when I got here. Sexuality was not really a concern of mine because I was so depressed, like clinically depressed. And then, if you remember, I ended up getting transferred to the psych ward because I was having so much trouble just dealing with the actual reality of my injury. So, and sexuality was part of that. I was denial. I wasn't ready to really dive into sexuality at that time. I certainly had incredible fears that related to sexuality because I didn't think I was going to be able to function or find someone, and that all together was, that led to that depression.
So, when you finally sort of started thinking about it a little bit, did you think sex was possible for you? Like, how did you imagine your sexual future?
When it was muddied, I did think about it. I was given information. I wasn't ready for it. I think if I fast forward maybe a year or two later, when I was much better psychologically, I was ready to start thinking about these things. I was still incredibly anxious, and I was very uncertain, about things. And I grew up, in a similar manner, like Elaine said, you don't really talk about sex. It made me uncomfortable. I certainly didn't want to talk about it with any of my family there. And it was something that I wasn't very open to exploring because I had so much insecurities that I was dealing with, still. Even though a year and a half later I was better, I was ready to move on with life, I was still having trouble, pushing that envelope because I wasn't comfortable with my own skin.
So what helped you, if you had to pick something that helped you get comfortable in your skin that sort of led to you reinventing your sexuality, what would you say?
I would have to say that I knew I was here. I wanted to get here. Right. I wanted to explore. I needed to push myself to do that, and only through experience, even if I didn't feel ready for it. So I started to date after, maybe the first year, and it was those first few experiences that I really needed as like a building block to, get more comfortable with myself and finding people that had really good sense of humors and were really patient and really caring. So my embarrassment they'd be able to handle my own insecurities. And it was through experience that I was able to get more comfortable with being able to have a sexual relationship after my injury.
Did sports help you out?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was, I think we all roads lead to Jim in a way up there. He really is a great mentor, but, he encouraged me to, I was biking at the time, and he put me in touch with two other friends, George and April, who were triathletes, and, they taught me how to swim, taught me how to push in a racing chair, and that really gave me a healthy outlet to put a lot of my anxiety and my energy towards something positive that was goal-oriented. And it was a good way for me to push my comfort zone. And that confidence that I was getting about creating goals athletic-wise, I was able to transfer that to my social life, where I was able to take more risks. And even though I still wasn't 110% comfortable in my own skin, I was learning that I needed to fake that, because the more anxious I was, and you project that, and it's harder for your partner to be able to respond in the way you want them to. And I'm now 17 years injured, and I'll always have anxiety that I'll carry with me. But now I'm with so much experience, I know I need to just kind of like in a way that Matt said before, where he's in that moment watching his children swim, and I almost teared because I know what he's like, those visions of what I have as having children like that. I sometimes focus on the wrong things, what I can't do, what you were saying, and so what I'm trying to say is it's important to recognize those weaknesses that will always be there, so that you don't create added stress that's only going to make it more complicated. For example, I remember, the first special romantic evening my wife and I had. We were staying over at a hotel in Boston together, and we had been involved sexually prior to that, but we have never slept together through the night. And I use intermittent catheters, and it's always been an insecurity of mine just to say, by the way, I'm going to wake myself up at 4 a.m, and I'm going to insert a catheter into myself and pee while I'm lying down in the bed, because that's just how I do it. And it's a little weird, because that's not an average thing for an average person to have to do. So I guess you could, this was 16 years after my injury, and I had several relationships leading up to those 16 years that failed. So I have all this baggage with me that and in that moment, I was really nervous about telling her about this catheter, but I didn't let her see it. I just made it like, you know what? I'm just letting you know I'm going to take out a catheter at about 4 a.m. I'm going to pee, put it in a bag, and it's going to go right in the nightstand. No big deal. It was a huge deal. But I had to set her up for it in a manner that she would know that it wasn't a big deal. So we always go back to that story because she just thought it was cool because I presented it in a cool manner. But it was in my own mind, it's not cool, and I'm so lucky I found my wife she's got so much understanding, and it's just like, I just got to remember my own baggage, I can't let it interfere, because if I present it in a wrong way, it's going to make it harder for us to do things together.
So what would you tell the audience? It sounds like for you, maybe the sexuality information at the get-go right away in rehab, would that have been too soon?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that it's really... Everybody's an individual, I'm amazed at how Mike was able to, be so ready to explore. I think that's great. I wish I had that confidence, even sometimes maybe now, even though I feel better today. But everyone's different, and you have to remember that some people need this information, and they just need to know that it's out there. So that maybe if they're not ready today, and when I mentor patients now, I let them know that, when you're ready, there's whatever the topic is, just know that there's something positive and something for you to look forward to. And I at the time I wasn't ready for it, but I certainly was a year and a half later. And so I think timing is important too. But make sure they just plant the seed for them so that they can know that this is going to be available to them when they're ready to talk about it.
That's an excellent point. Thank you. Okay, now we have Namel Norris. Hi, Namel. Okay, so it's sort of the same question.
Hey, okay.
There you go. I've been asking people about their sexuality prior to their injury, and if I recall from having known you for a while, you were quite young, so you may have a slightly different take on this question.
Yeah, it's tap waters too, so it's okay. I guess, but it's so funny because I got injured in 1999 too. Wow. Yeah, and I was 17. I didn't, okay, so I ain't gonna lie, at that age, I was masturbating a lot, right? I was having sex, not that much, but I did at that time, a few times. So when I got injured, it was those who don't know, I was injured by a gunshot. And it happened in a way that was kind of, tragic to me, and because it was an incident where my cousin was playing around with a gun and shot me. So I was dealing with a lot of that stress early on of that story. But So sex was not really on my mind till like later on when I started realizing the difference in my body, and I never really spoke. I was in Burke rehab, and I remember it was this guy there, and he brought me the tape of like this guy having sex with this girl, and it was.
That's the tape.
No, yeah, it was like the tape. And the funny thing about the tape is the guy didn't look like me, and the girl didn't look like a girl I would like. So that wasn't cool for me. So I just took it in stride, and at that time I didn't have confidence in myself that I could like actually get a girl again or whatever. So it was like sex was a far-fetched thing for me. I was fortunate that I guess girls still had liked me at the time, and so I kind of didn't have a choice. No, like it's serious, and that's what happened to me. It was like trial by fire. Like I didn't have a choice. No, not like that. Just like no, like if a girl say she like you, and I was very shy at the time. It was like I'm not gonna be like, okay, well I was afraid. I didn't know what to do, but I'm not gonna go through the steps of like just being with a girl. So I had to learn a lot just because I felt like I really didn't have a choice at the time. I was gonna,
I understand what you're saying. So did it change over time for you? I mean, you're young. This was all very new. You didn't have much experience before the injury. Now you have the injury happens, and it sounds like there were a lot of opportunities. Did it improve over time?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I started to learn, like, all right, because for those who don't know, like, I do music. I got a crew called 4 Wheel City, and, like, we do a lot of disability advocacy. And, all right, so 4 Wheel City, since I shot, can I guess, when I say 4, y'all say wheels, 4. Wheels. 4. Wheels. When I say 4 wheel, y'all say city. 4 wheel. City. 4 wheel. City. All right, shout out to my partner, Rick Fire. I just want to do that. All right, so, yeah, so, like, I had everything for me was never focused on none of that stuff. It just was like living life. Like I went back to school, doing music. You meet people, you meet females, and you get to a point where, like for me, everything in the beginning was like, okay, how I'm gonna have sex the way I used to try to have sex. Like how I'm gonna get on top, or how this gonna happen. But before even all that, I used to touch myself a lot and stuff to like just see what would happen, what response I get, and then it became in situations where I would get erection through like physical stuff, medication, whatever. But to me, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't fully satisfied. Like just doing that, like trying to be how I was before. It wasn't like really fulfilling to me. So I had to learn to like through over the years, like where was I trying to go sexually? Like what was gonna be, what for me would be like, okay, I had sex. Without just being like, okay, my dick got hard and I had intercourse, even though I really didn't enjoy it the way I used to. So I had to like learn different things about myself that was like pleasurable to where I felt like, okay, that was sex, because I really, really enjoy how that felt. And then I like had to learn how to like tell somebody that and stuff like that. And then like doing that, and then you start to realize that the person you with or whoever, they have the same thing. Because they have like, sometimes they don't enjoy the certain things either that like traditionally is like defined as sex. So it's like then you start communicating, then it's like a whole different thing happening that I start to realize sex is not like just sex. It's like more like it's like gotta be, it's whatever it feels like. That's how I see it. It's like sex is, I see it's like, you know, like foreplay. Sometimes I think sex is even like before you even like is physical with someone, because some people see somebody and you say, oh, I want to have sex with them. That's like, I think that starts like the process of like you actually kind of having sex with them, if you can get to that point, right? That's how I see it. So it's kind of like the level of attraction and what you can do to please each other.
It sounds like maybe you moved into a more sensual experience than
Of
just
course.
like a genital experience.
But I think that's all sex really is, really. I mean, when you think about it, because from women I've known that dealt with or spoke to, is like, because a lot of men walking on their feet, when you hear stories like, they don't know it all either. So it's like, so I'm like, okay, so I don't have to beat myself down so much either, because I'm like, I'm not right. We all got a different story now, so now I know I'm in like a fair playing field where I can like find something that you might like that's I might just can do, I don't know, and stuff like that. So I'm just pretty open-minded and confident about it. So, and that's not because I'm just that way. It's like over the years and to the point where, like, you know, we have a song about the home attendants and stuff. Like, I was able to write a song about like having stuff happen at home, but it was just being funny because no, it wasn't really okay. That happened, right? All right, so I fell in love with my home attendant. Some of y'all know. It said, so come ride with me on this hit as I sit and reminisce on the fears that I had with my home attendants. Had them from every state, every continent. When they walk through the door, I give them compliments like, you're so pretty. Had this one aide from New York City, was from Brooklyn, so she had a thing for Biggie and was ready to die. But I wasn't ready yet, so I had to say bye. Then I had to say hi, because my next home attendant was a Rastafari. So you know I stay high. It's like three verses of just like all kind of stories of home attendants. Not that all of them are true. Maybe just like one or two of them, but I just thought that I know like people in my situation know what I'm talking about, but for me it was like I like rap, and like I thought about a song Jay-Z did when he was like girls, and he was just talking about all these different type of girls he had, and I was like, for somebody with a disability who people think we don't have sex, like that would be real dope. And me and Rick made the beat to like try to express that through our point of view with like those kind of females. I thought it would be funny, but the real thing about it was it was just showing people that like we still can be sexual, you know. That's it.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Namel. I'm going to come over. Okay. Now we have one more member. We have the brave female on the panel. Give it up for Jessie. So, Jessie.
Are you all prepared for the female point of view now?
The female point of view.
Okay. Everything started out when I was able-bodied. I was very, very sexual active, just with one partner, obviously. But I was very creative. I loved to keep the fire going. And I came from like a society in which we had to maneuver techniques to keep our man, so they wouldn't like, leave with another one or something like that. So, all my girlfriends were older than me, and I would ask, like, what's the secret? How do you keep a man? Like, how do I keep? And I was in a relationship for 5 years before my accident, and I just had to keep on like innovating, being creative, foreplaying. I would dress up, light some candles, aromas. I would play around, like I would make sure my guy was there. So I was very, very into sensuality, sexuality, intimacy, and trying to figure out always how, my man was gonna still be interested in me and not go with another girl. When my accident happened, I was like, oops, now what can I do? I was used to like being the leader. Like I was on top. I was like performing everything. It was my circus. So now what am I gonna do, right? Like I'm not on top anymore. Like I'm like the little doll now. They have to like maneuver me, or they have to like do things to me. I can't be, the one in charge. I did think that I wasn't gonna be able, because I wasn't physical. Like guys weren't gonna look at me the same way. They wouldn't want me. They wouldn't want to be with me. So I just said, okay, sex is out of the picture. I'm just gonna be everybody, like my guys, like that baby, like, oh, my little sister, my little cousin. And fortunately, okay, like I said, I was in a relationship, and my boyfriend came to visit. I was in the hospital here in Mount Sinai. I didn't know what to say to him. It's like when you're not with your partner for a long time, and then you see each other and you just want to get it on and you want to do something, right? And I'm like, what am I going to do now? But I offered oral sex. Yes. So then we made sure, the nurses, their rounds were like finished and everything. We closed the door and we got into it, and at least I could have shown my partner that I gave him satisfaction and that I was able to pursue that the same way as before, correct? And that, I needed just a little bit more time to figure out how I was going to maneuver everything again, like my circus again. He wasn't from here. He went back to his country. They didn't give me notion of nothing about sexuality while I was as an inpatient. They did the video. That didn't give much. That didn't say much to me. And at the moment, I was just wanting to get stronger and stronger to be that leader again, correct? I was on top. I always wanted to be on top. So I needed to get stronger. And my focus was mainly on getting stronger. So I didn't go into that part of sex or sexuality. And I knew that my boyfriend was like overseas. He was waiting. So I just, for a while, I'm like, okay, if he's not here, like nobody's gonna see me. Like he was the one that was with me, so he was gonna be with me. To get somebody new, it didn't cross my mind. And knowing that I wasn't that physical anymore, knowing that before I was very physical, and my hair and my body and the gym, and my society was very into that part. So physically, it was a big no-no for me to pursue another relationship. But then someone from my past came to my life again, and he started, he started visiting me, talking to me, and then we got to that point of being intimate. And I started to explain that it was going to be my first time, so I was like a virgin again, and that I didn't know what was going to happen. So together, we both like educated each other, and he supported the idea of trying it again. So for him was like, yes, she's a virgin again, and we were learning and things like that. And finally, the day came. I was like, oh my God, I was praying to God. I'm like, I want to feel something. I didn't know if I was going to be able to feel the penetration, this and that. But like we started very slowly to interact and to know my body. So he helped a lot. That was so cool. He was into like, exploring, and everything went swell. That first time, everything went swell. And I'm like, okay, this, I could take it from here. Yeah, I mean, I'm still alive. I feel in a certain different way, but I was able. So from there, a lot of like intimacy came about, like caressing, visually, the smell, the hearing, seeing how, your man would position you, like everything became so sexy.
Right.
So sexy made it happen for me.
Now, just briefly, because I know I'm trying to keep to the time, but I know that you've had an experience that we don't often hear much about, which is when two people in a wheelchair actually get into a relationship together. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about that?
That was so crazy. Crazy. Okay, I'm a quad, okay? I don't have my hands, my body ain't that, strong. And I got a boyfriend. I got into a relationship with a guy in a wheelchair. He was, he had his hands, his arms. He was, I think, a quad, but a low quad. When he started like bothering me and calling me up and I like you and this and let's try, and I'm like, are you sure? Like, hello, can you see each other? Like, could this happen? And I'm like, okay. So I gave it a try. I'm like, why not? I'm adventurous. I like to try things. And oh my God, that was so crazy. Wow. For real. So I was, at the beginning, I would like ask questions, and I thought this dude was like, he was professional and he knew, and he had other relationships like this, but it was a lie. Like he wanted to invent with me, or like it was his first time with me also. And I'm like, okay. So I would ask questions, and he's like, don't worry, it's gonna be okay, this and then. I'm like, but I don't understand how. The day happened, and I'm like, okay. I made sure my aide, put me real nice. I was smelling good. I was washed and everything. And we were left alone. And then he started like jumping around the bed. And I'm like, now what? Like he's trying to like position me without like the strength that he should have. But we made it happen. And it was beautiful. It was such a nice experience. It was so cool. I mean, there was a lot of jumping around. But I wasn't jumping around. Actually, he was the one jumping around. And in one occasion, like, I had like these two beds, and he fell like in the middle. And for him to get up, it was crazy. I was laughing, but he wouldn't hear me. He was on the floor trying to get up. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, it's like, I cannot stop from laughing, but I didn't want to like make him feel bad. And he was like trying to get up. He was pissed. And I was like, okay, he finally got up again. But the thing was that it was nice because we explored each other. We did get to the moment that we felt that penetration, that craziness of him getting inside of me, it wasn't important. Like, I felt him, and I taught him how to feel me without him being frustrated that he couldn't get it in. So that was fun. I mean, yeah.
Wow. I don't think I'm the only one that's feeling this way. Like, as I'm listening to everybody, and I'm thinking that I've learned so much today, just about love and about what it really means. And when I hear all your stories, I could even tear up because I realize like that it's so much more than what many able-bodied people experience, because people are always in a rush to do this or that, or they have these physical capabilities and they don't slow down enough to pay attention to each other the way you've all described that you do. So, yes, Mike.
I think the more we focus like less on the disability part of it and the mobility part of it, the better things are.
Yeah.
It really does come down to exploration and just being in a place with your partner or partners.
Like.
That works.
Yeah, I agree.
And I also want to say there's a lot of therapists I see out there in the audience there. Without you guys, a lot of this wouldn't be possible because you keep individuals like us strong so that we can be able to have these experiences. So.
Well, please give us a big thank you to all of these.
I have two questions. One for the young lady. What did they ever tell you about pregnancy, your chances, or whatever? Did you worry about it? Did you think about it? And for all the other gentlemen, I want to hear about some romance.
Oh,
Even
yeah,
the
we
ones
have
who
plenty to-
I want to hear some stories about some romance. But first, talk about pregnancy, because you're a girl.
Okay, I thought I wasn't gonna be able to be a mommy, but fortunately I researched, and maybe I'm into the plans of getting into the fertilization. I've spoken to a friend, and we're like talking about this for 2 years now. So maybe let's see if I'll go through with it.
No, unfortunately, we can't talk much about romance because we have to move on to the rest of the program. But there's a conference on May 12th and 13th where some of these people will also be there talking about romance. So that's one more round of applause.